Just to share with you a little bit of my experiential approach, how I've come to arrive via introspection at the same conclusions that Bernardo has arrived at. And I'll start by way of an analogy. Everything that, all the objects and characters that appear in a movie derive their reality, relatively speaking, of course, from the single screen. And likewise, I would suggest that all the objects and animals and people that we experience in nature derive their seemingly independent existence from a single reality, which ultimately cannot be named. And just as the screen never appears as an object in the movie, and yet it is all there is to the movie, likewise, the ultimate reality of the universe never appears as an object in the universe, although it is all there is to the universe. So it is sometimes said that reality lies behind the multiplicity and diversity of appearances and is concealed by them, that reality is somehow hidden behind the world. This is like saying, this would be the equivalent in our analogy of saying that the screen lies behind the movie and is hidden by it. Now, the screen obviously doesn't lie behind the movie, nor is it hidden by the movie, because all there is to the movie is the screen. Not only does the screen not lie behind the movie and is not concealed by it, it shines as the movie. It appears as the movie. So what is it that makes it seem that the screen is not being perceived? It is that our belief that the landscape in the movie is real in its own right. If we believe that the landscape in the movie is real in its own right, then we will believe that the landscape veils or conceals the screen. We will believe that the reality of the movie lies somehow behind the movie and is hidden by it. Likewise, the reason we think that the reality of the universe is hidden behind the universe and is concealed by it is only because we believe that the objects that appear to us as the universe are real in their own right. If we believe that the objects that appear to us as the universe are real in their own right, then we will believe that their reality is concealed behind them and is obscured by them. Of course, the objects that appear to us in the form of the universe do not obscure their reality, because all there is to those objects is their reality. Not only does the universe not conceal its reality, it shines with it. The universe is an appearance of that reality. So we might ask the question then, how is it possible for us to know the nature of reality if our only access to the universe is via perception? If all we know of the universe through perception and conception, through perceptions and thoughts, are a multiplicity and diversity of objects and selves, how is it ever possible to know the reality of the universe? Indeed, it would not be possible to know the reality of the universe if our only access to it was through perception and thought. However, there is one aspect, one element of the universe that we have direct, unmediated access to. When I say unmediated, I mean we have access to it through a channel that does not go through perception or thought, and that is our knowledge of ourself. Our knowledge of ourself is the only knowledge there is that is not mediated through thought or perception, and therefore it is the only channel through which we have direct, unmediated access to the reality of the universe. And it is for this reason that self-knowledge stands at the heart of all the great religious and spiritual traditions. And I would go further and suggest that any scientist or philosopher who wants to know the ultimate nature of the universe must sooner or later end up investigating the ultimate nature of their self, the essential nature of their self. So, how do we go about investigating the essential nature of ourself? The essential nature of anything is the aspect of that thing that cannot be removed from it. So, one way to make this experiential investigation into the essential nature of ourself would be to remove, in fact, we don't need to remove, it would be sufficient to imagine removing everything from us that is not essential to us. So I suggest let's just embark, do this investigation for a few minutes. We won't go into too much detail, but start by closing your eyes. That removes one element of our experience, namely sights. And just imagine removing every element of your experience that is not essential to you. Sights, sounds, tastes, textures, smells, images, memories, emotions, thoughts. Just imagine discarding any element of your experience that is not essential to you. One way to find out whether or not an experience is essential to us would be this: any experience that starts and stops, that appears and disappears, is not essential to us. So any experience that you have ever had that begins, exists for a while, and comes to an end cannot be essential to us. If it were essential to us, it would not come to an end. So in your imagination, Remove everything from yourself that can be removed. Trace your way back through the layers of your experience. And then ask yourself the question, when everything that can be removed from me has been removed from me, what remains? And don't do this experiment philosophically, do it experientially. It's like undressing at night. We take off everything that can be taken off. What remains? Now, of course, later on in our conversation, we will give that which remains a name. We'll have to name it in order to speak of it. But don't allow yourself to give it a name yet. Whatever it is that remains is the essential, irreducible essence of ourself. And whatever the essential nature of ourself, it must be the essential nature of the universe, of which we, as apparently separate entities, are a part. In the same way that to investigate any object in a movie, it is sufficient to investigate, relatively speaking, of course, going back to my analogy, it is sufficient to investigate any object in a movie to discover its reality, the screen. And that screen must be the reality of all the objects in the movie, likewise. It is only necessary to investigate the essential nature of ourself in order to know the essential nature of the universe. In fact, I would suggest the only way to know experientially the essential nature of the universe is to know the essential nature of oneself, because our knowledge of ourself is the only knowledge that is not mediated through thought and perception. Therefore, the key, the golden key to this discovery of the ultimate nature of reality is this investigation into the ultimate nature of ourself. And it is for this reason that the words "know thyself" were carved above the entrance of the temple of Apollo in Delphi and stand as such at the dawn of Western civilization. would suggest that at this hour of our civilization, this recognition of the essential nature of ourself, and therefore the recognition of the essential nature of all people, all animals, and all things, has perhaps never been more important than it is now. So that was just a very brief experiential introduction to this investigation into the nature of reality that I know you have been exploring with Bernardo in this course.